The billionaire disguised himself as a janitor in his own resort, not as a publicity stunt, not as a social experiment designed for headlines, and certainly not because he needed the money. Robinson Tyler did it because something had stopped making sense. Every report said the same thing: high satisfaction, smooth operations, strong leadership. Every spreadsheet glowed green. Every executive presentation ended with applause. Yet something felt hollow. So, on a quiet morning, before the sun fully burned away the ocean fog, Robinson Tyler knelt on the marble floor of the Cliffside Crest Resort and scraped gum from between tiles with a plastic blade that bent far too easily. The uniform scratched at the back of his neck, navy blue, stiff, designed for durability, not comfort. The sleeves were too short, exposing his wrists to the chill of the stone floor, and the name badge pinned to his chest simply read, Maintenance Tamp. The mop bucket beside him rattled softly every time he shifted his weight. Its wheels squeaked like they were complaining about being dragged into this with him. Guests drifted past in white robes, slippers whispering against the polished floor. Some clutched porcelain cups of coffee. Others stared through their phones, thumbs flicking with practiced boredom. They smelled like citrus soap and expensive sunscreen. No one looked at him. A woman nearly tripped over his extended leg and huffed in irritation, as if he had placed himself there just to inconvenience her morning. Maintenance should really do a better job, she muttered, not bothering to lower her voice. Robinson paused, plastic scraper hovering just above the gum. He almost laughed. Maintenance is doing a perfect job, he thought. The problem is that no one notices. That was the point. Robinson Tyler had built this place from the ground up. He remembered standing on the cliff years ago, wind tearing at his suit, imagining where the glass walls would curve to catch the sunset just right. He had approved the marble, the lighting, even the playlist that played softly through hidden speakers in the lobby. He had signed checks that could buy small islands. He had smiled for magazine covers beside words like visionary and industry disruptor. And now, he was discovering that none of that mattered if you wore the wrong uniform. The morning dragged on. Robinson cleaned fingerprints from glass railings that would be smudged again within minutes. He hauled linen carts down hallways so long they felt like tunnels. He wiped down surfaces that guests would never consciously notice but would complain about instantly if they weren't perfect. In 4 hours, exactly 0 people asked his name. 3 people told him to move. One man snapped his fingers at him from across the lobby, pointing vaguely at a spill as if directing traffic. Robinson moved. He always moved. By noon, his knees ached, and his back burned in a way that gym workouts never managed to achieve. His stomach twisted sharply, reminding him that he'd skipped breakfast in his rush to start the experiment properly. He straightened slowly, stretching muscles that weren't used to this kind of labor, and glanced around for signs of an employee cafeteria. The manual HR had given him mentioned one. Briefly, vaguely. It read like it had been written by someone who had never actually tried to eat there. Every door he tried was locked. Every hallway seemed to end in a staff-only sign, followed by a supervisor who looked at him like he was tracking mud across their carpet. Not this way. Keep moving. Didn't you get the memo? Eventually, the smell reached him. Butter, garlic, something frying. It wrapped around him like a hand closing gently at the back of his neck and pulled him forward. The kitchen. Robinson slowed as he approached the side entrance, unsure if he was even allowed to stand there. The noise spilled out in waves, pots clanging, voices shouting, timers beeping. It wasn't chaos exactly. It was controlled madness, the kind that only works because everyone involved knows exactly what they're doing. He hovered for a moment too long. Hey! The voice was sharp, clean, unamused. Janitorial staff don't loiter around the kitchen. Robinson turned. Frederick Scott stood a few feet away, immaculate in a tailored suit that looked wildly out of place near the steam and stainless steel. His hair was sculpted into place. His eyes scanned Robinson like he was an item on an inventory list that didn't belong. I was just looking for the cafeteria, Robinson said calmly. Frederick didn't soften. Downstairs, if it's still open. Then, dismissively, now move. Robinson moved. He followed the directions. Downstairs. 3rd door on the left. Past towel storage that smelled faintly of bleach and fabric softener. He glanced at his watch 2 minutes before the cafeteria closed. He broke into an awkward jog, pushing his cleaning cart, which seemed determined to collide with every corner along the way. When he reached the door, an employee was already pulling the metal gate down. "Wait, there are still 2 minutes left." The employee didn't look at him. Cafeteria clock runs fast. The gate slammed shut. Robinson stood there, sweaty and breathless, stomach growling loud enough to echo down the hallway. He owned restaurants on 3 continents. He had eaten with heads of state. And he couldn't get a sandwich in his own resort. He wasn't sure whether to find that poetic or pathetic. Then he heard the noise again. The kitchen. He drifted back toward it, more cautiously this time, staying near the shadows. He told himself he was just observing, understanding the ecosystem he supposedly oversaw. That's when he saw her. Catherine Smith moved through the kitchen with quiet precision, hair pulled back, apron stained. Her hands worked fast cutting, seasoning, plating, while her expression shifted between intense focus and subtle amusement whenever someone shouted something particularly dramatic. She rolled her eyes once, just slightly, and Robinson felt something loosen in his chest. It was like watching a dancer move through a battlefield. He took 1 step too close. "Not again," someone snapped. "I told you maintenance doesn't hang around here." Robinson backed away, hands raised slightly. He was almost back in the hallway when something slid across the steel counter toward him. A plate, rice, vegetables, grilled chicken. Simple, warm, real. "Eat fast," a woman's voice said without looking up. Frederick hates missing a chance to yell at someone. Robinson froze. "For me?" Catherine glanced up. "Just for a second. You look like you haven't eaten." That was it. No curiosity. No suspicion. No questions about why a janitor was hovering near the kitchen. Robinson ate, standing in the corner, heart heavier than his stomach. Each bite reminded him how long it had been since someone had done something for him without knowing exactly who he was. When he finished, Catherine was already gone, swallowed back into the chaos. Robinson leaned against the cool wall of the hallway and closed his eyes briefly. In one day, one person had noticed him, and that changed everything. That night, Robinson Tyler rewrote the rules of his plan. This was no longer an experiment. It was a lesson. And he was going to see it through. If this story already has you hooked, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this. Robinson Tyler did not sleep well that night. It wasn't the mattress custom-made, imported, absurdly expensive. Even in the anonymous staff dormitory he'd chosen for the sake of realism, it wasn't the distant sound of the ocean, or the occasional hum of a service cart rolling down a hallway at an hour most guests would never witness. It was the plate. Rice, vegetables, grilled chicken. Simple food, offered without hesitation, without calculation. For the first time in years, Robinson woke before his alarm, already alert, already thinking. By the time the fog lifted off the cliffs and the resort stirred to life, he was back in the navy blue uniform, name badge pinned crookedly to his chest, hands smelling faintly of industrial cleaner. Maintenance temp. The words felt heavier today. He returned to work with a strange sense of anticipation, as if something important might happen if he paid close enough attention. By mid-morning, his stomach reminded him that anticipation wasn't a meal. He checked his watch again. Still too early for lunch. Still too early to risk missing the cafeteria window. He planned his route carefully this time, retracing the path from memory down the service stairs, past towel storage, third door on the left. Only this time, a supervisor stopped him halfway. "Where do you think you're going?" The man had a clipboard and the permanent scowl of someone who believed authority was measured by how loudly you spoke. "Cafeteria," Robinson replied. The supervisor frowned. "Maintenance eats after kitchen staff. Come back later." "Later when?" "When I say—" Robinson nodded and stepped aside. Later never came. By the time he tried again, a different supervisor blocked his way. This one didn't even pretend to explain. "Not your break yet." "I haven't had one," Robinson said. The supervisor shrugged. "That's not my problem." Robinson retreated, jaw tightening not in anger, but in something quieter and more dangerous. Recognition. He had approved staffing schedules like these. signed off on policies that looked efficient on paper and brutal in practice. He had never imagined what it felt like to be shuffled around by people who didn't care whether you ate or not. By early afternoon, hunger gnawed at him with sharp insistence. He found himself drifting, almost unconsciously, back toward the kitchen. The closer he got, the louder it became. The kitchen was not chaos, it was choreography. Metal clanged in rhythm. Flames hissed and flared. Voices rose and fell in a language that blended urgency with routine. Orders were barked, corrected, repeated. Someone cursed in 3 languages when a pan slipped. Another laughed, breathless, without slowing their hands. And in the middle of it all, Catherine Smith. Robinson noticed her before she noticed him. She stood at one of the prep stations, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back into a practical knot that exposed her neck. Her apron bore the marks of long shifts, oil stains, flour dust, a faint burn near the pocket. She moved with efficiency that bordered on elegance, slicing vegetables with swift confidence, sliding plates into place without looking. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She managed the chaos. Robinson watched from the edge of the doorway, careful not to cross some invisible line he was still learning existed. "Hey!" A voice snapped behind him. "You again?" It was a sous chef this time. Red-faced and sweating, brandishing a spatula like a warning sign. "I told you maintenance staff don't hang around here." "I'm not hanging around," Robinson said, taking a step back. "I was just out." The sous chef interrupted, pointing sharply toward the hall. "Now." Robinson obeyed. He always obeyed. He had almost cleared the doorway when something slid across the steel counter, stopping just short of the edge. A plate. Not yesterday's leftovers. Not scraps. A full plate. "Eat," Catherine said quietly, not looking at him. "Before he comes back." Robinson hesitated. "For me?" he asked again, softer this time. She glanced up, eyes a clear, steady blue, taking him in with a quick assessment that felt less like judgment and more like confirmation. "You missed lunch," she said. "Didn't you?" "Yes." "Well, that explains the hovering." The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Robinson stepped forward and took the plate. It was warm, comforting in a way he hadn't expected. "Thank you," he said. "Forks on the left," she added. "Don't touch the one on the right. Marcos has a thing about his utensils." As if summoned by name, someone shouted from the back. "Who took my fork?" Catherine rolled her eyes. "See?" Robinson moved to the darkest corner he could find and ate standing up, aware of every sensation. The noise. The heat. The way the food grounded him, slowed him, reminded him that his body had limits no amount of money could negotiate. He wasn't sure what he expected to feel. Gratitude, certainly. But beneath it something else. Humility. When he finished, Catherine was already back at her station, hands flying, voice calm as she coordinated with the others around her. Robinson set the plate down carefully, unsure where to leave it, then retreated into the hallway. He leaned against the wall and exhaled. One plate, one person, and already, the entire day felt different. The next morning, he came prepared. He reached the cafeteria early, too early. The gate was still down. "Come back in 20, the attendant said without looking at him. Robinson waited. 20 minutes turned into 30. When the gate finally lifted, someone stepped in front of him. "Kitchen staff first." Robinson stepped aside. The gate slammed shut again minutes later. He didn't curse. He didn't argue. He simply turned and walked back toward the kitchen. This time, he didn't hover. He leaned against the wall just outside the door, pretending to check his phone. When Catherine emerged briefly to grab something from storage, she stopped short when she saw him. "You again?" He shrugged. Persistent hunger. She studied him for a moment, then shook her head. "Wait here." She disappeared. A minute later, she reappeared with a wrapped sandwich and an apple. "No plate today," she said. "Faster this way." Robinson accepted it, fingers brushing hers. "Thank you," he said again. She hesitated, then nodded once. "You're welcome." That became their rhythm. A sandwich tucked behind cleaning supplies. A container, forgotten, on a shelf. Once, a napkin with directions written in quick handwriting. Third cart. Bottom drawer. Each time Catherine found a way. They spoke in fragments at first. Half sentences. Observations exchanged in passing. "You're waxing the floor wrong," she said one afternoon, pausing in a doorway. "I am? That's furniture polish," she replied. "Unless you're trying to create an ice rink." Robinson glanced at the bottle, then at the marble floor. "Well," he said, "that explains the screaming earlier." She laughed, a real laugh, quick and unguarded. "Here," she said, grabbing a different bottle. "Use this, and wipe it before someone sues us." "Us," she shrugged. "If you fall, I'm blaming you. If a guest falls, they blame everyone." They worked in silence for a moment, comfortable in it. "Catherine," she said suddenly. "Sorry. My name," she clarified. "In case you were wondering." "I was," Robinson admitted. "I'm Rob." She raised an eyebrow. "Just Rob?" "Just Rob. All right, just Rob," she said, returning to the kitchen. "Try not to polish any more floors into lawsuits." As she walked away, Robinson realized something unsettling. He was looking forward to the next day. Not the data. Not the exposure of inefficiencies. Here, by the end of the week, he had learned her schedule without asking. He knew which days were hardest, when the sous chef's temper ran shortest, when the kitchen ran on fumes and caffeine. He learned that Catherine worked doubles more often than not, that she stayed late to help others without being asked, that she noticed things most people didn't, like a janitor who hadn't eaten. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the kitchen windows gold, Catherine handed him a container and said, casually, "You know, you're terrible at pretending this doesn't matter to you." Robinson paused. "What doesn't?" "This place," she said. "Most temps just keep their heads down." He met her gaze, careful. "Maybe I'm bad at pretending." She studied him for a long moment, then smiled, not playful this time, but curious. "Yeah," she said, "maybe." That night, Robinson sat on the edge of his bed long after the lights were out. The original plan had been 3 days. Observe. Confirm suspicions. Leave. Instead, he found himself calculating schedules, mapping patterns, wondering how long Catherine had been holding things together with duct tape and patience. And for the first time since he'd put on the uniform, he admitted the truth to himself. 3 days wouldn't be enough. He wasn't done. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. By the 5th day, Robinson Tyler had stopped pretending the food was the reason he drifted toward the kitchen. It was part of it, sure. Hunger still arrived on schedule, sharp and insistent, especially when his break window closed without warning or explanation. But if he was honest, and he was learning to be honest with himself in uncomfortable ways, he could have survived on vending machine crackers if he had to. What he couldn't ignore was the pull, the quiet certainty that somewhere between the clang of pots and the hiss of burners, someone would look up and see him. Catherine never made a big deal out of helping him. That was the strangest part. The first time she hid food for him, she slipped a wrapped sandwich into the bottom drawer of his cleaning cart while he was distracted scrubbing a baseboard. "Check your supplies," she murmured as she passed. Robinson waited exactly 30 seconds before kneeling and pulling the drawer open. Inside sat a sandwich, neatly wrapped, still warm, with a napkin tucked underneath. On the napkin, she'd written in hurried pen, "If anyone asks, that's industrial-strength protein." He bit back a laugh. The second time, she left a container behind the fire extinguisher near the service stairs. The third time, it was inside a spotless mop bucket, sealed in plastic, with a note taped to the lid. "Please don't actually mop with this." Each discovery felt like a private joke shared across the noise and hierarchy of the resort. They spoke more now, still in fragments, still careful, but the edges softened. "You're hovering," Catherine said one afternoon without looking at him. "I'm observing," Robinson replied. "You've been observing the same wall for 10 minutes. "It's a very interesting wall." She glanced over her shoulder, lips twitching. "Fascinating texture." "Riveting." She shook her head and slid a granola bar into his hand as she passed. "Eat." It was small, ridiculous moments like that anchored his days. One morning, he found a note taped to the inside of a supply closet. Wrong closet. Try again. He wandered 2 doors down and opened it to find a brown paper bag sitting on a shelf like a prize. Inside, a muffin, an apple, and a handwritten smiley face. Robinson stared at it for a full 10 seconds, then laughed aloud in the empty hallway. Enjoying yourself? He jumped. Catherine stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. You're the one turning hunger into a scavenger hunt, he said. Gotta keep things interesting, she replied. Otherwise, this place eats you alive. She wasn't joking. The longer Robinson stayed, the more he saw the cracks beneath the polished surface. Staff moved with the efficiency of people who knew there was no margin for error. Breaks were skipped. Overtime went unrecorded. Complaints were met with tight smiles and warnings disguised as advice. Catherine carried it all with quiet competence. She worked the early shift, the late shift, and often the space in between. When someone called in sick, she covered. When equipment malfunctioned, she improvised. When temp workers panicked, she steadied them. One afternoon, as they stood in a narrow hallway waiting for a linen cart to pass, Robinson finally asked, "How long is your shift today?" Catherine didn't answer right away. 16 hours, she said eventually, as if discussing the weather. Robinson frowned. That's not legal, is it? She laughed short, humorless. Depends who you ask. And they do this often? Only when someone's sick. Or quits. Or gets burned out. So, yes. Robinson felt something tighten in his chest. And you're okay with that? She shrugged. I'm okay with paying rent. How much do they pay you? He asked, careful to sound casual. She hesitated, then glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot. $7.25 an hour. Robinson stopped walking. After 3 years, she added, with no benefits. He stared at the floor, at the gleaming marble he'd approved, at the cost per square foot he knew by heart. He spent more than that on airport coffee some days. Catherine noticed his expression and smirked. Don't look so shocked. You'd think I told you the resort was held together by duct tape and hope. He looked up. It's not? Oh, it is, she said. You just can't see it from the lobby. The contrast was everywhere once he started looking. Guests complained about towels being 5 minutes late while staff skipped meals entirely. Managers spoke about efficiency while refusing to replace broken equipment. Every inconvenience flowed downhill. One evening, Robinson found Catherine leaning against a counter. Shoulders slumped, rubbing her wrist. Long day? He asked. She snorted. Is there another kind? You could sit, he suggested. She looked at him like he'd offered her a vacation in Paris. Sit? In here? Are you trying to get me fired? He smiled faintly. Worth a shot. She laughed despite herself, then straightened as someone shouted her name. But before she left, she slipped something into his hand. A wrapped bread roll. Dinner, she said. Don't tell anyone. Their banter grew easier. When Robinson confused cleaning supplies again, Catherine caught him mid-disaster. Stop, she said, grabbing the bottle from his hand. That's not for floors. It says polish, he protested. That's for wood. You're waxing marble. Maybe I'm innovating. You're creating a liability. She showed him the right bottle, her hands moving with practiced ease. You know, she said. For someone who's terrible at this, you're weirdly attentive. He smiled. I'm a fast learner. She studied him, then nodded. You'll survive. It was a strange thing to be measured not by performance reviews or net worth, but by whether someone believed you'd survive the day. Robinson realized, with a start, that he cared whether Catherine believed that. He cared when she looked tired, when her jokes came slower, when her shoulders sagged under the weight of expectations no one thanked her for meeting. He found himself staying late, not because he had to, but because he wanted to see if she was still there. And she usually was. By the end of the week, it had become obvious to him, at least, that he wasn't just collecting information anymore. He was invested, emotionally, personally. That realization came with a sharp edge of guilt, because he knew something Catherine didn't, and because every kindness she offered came without knowing the full truth. One afternoon, as he leaned against his cleaning cart eating a sandwich hidden behind folded towels, he felt a presence beside him. "You're here a lot." The voice was smooth, curious, dangerous. Robinson turned slowly. Frederick Scott stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp as ever. "I work here," Robinson replied evenly. Frederick studied him, gaze flicking to the cart, the hallway, the kitchen door in the distance. "Funny," Frederick said. "Most temps don't last this long." Robinson said nothing. Frederick smiled, thin and calculating. "And yet," he continued, "you seem very comfortable." His eyes lingered for a beat too long before he turned and walked away. Robinson watched him go, heart beating faster. For the first time since putting on the uniform, he felt something shift. The walls were listening now, and Frederick Scott had started to notice. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you more stories like this. Frederick Scott did not raise his voice often. That was the first thing Robinson noticed once he started paying attention. Frederick didn't need to shout. He didn't need to curse or throw things or slam doors. His authority lived in pauses, in looks that lingered a second too long, in the way conversations died the moment he entered a room. Fear followed him like a tailored shadow. Robinson saw it everywhere now, in the way staff straightened when Frederick walked past, in the way eyes dropped to the floor, in the way laughter cut off mid-sentence, as if someone had reached for an invisible volume knob and twisted it down. Frederick ruled the resort the way some men ruled kingdoms, not with chaos but with control. "Morning briefing." The words echoed through the service hallway, sharp and clean. Employees gathered near the loading dock, still holding towels, trays, clipboards. Some hadn't finished their coffee. Others hadn't slept. Robinson joined them quietly, leaning against his cleaning cart, head slightly bowed. Frederick stood at the front, immaculate as always, tablet in hand. "We've received complaints," he began, voice level. "Multiple. No names, no details, just the word complaints, heavy and ominous." He looked up slowly, letting the silence stretch. "The breakfast service was late yesterday." A murmur rippled through the group. Frederick raised a finger. "Late," he repeated, "because someone failed to adapt." His gaze slid toward the kitchen staff. Catherine stood near the back, arms crossed, jaw tight. "I don't care if equipment malfunctions," Frederick continued. "I don't care if you're understaffed. Professionals find solutions. They do not make excuses." A young line cook shifted his weight nervously. "Sir," the cook began, voice tentative. "The freezer." Frederick turned his head just enough to acknowledge him. "Did I ask for commentary?" The cook went silent. Frederick nodded once, satisfied. "Good. Because excuses waste time, and time is money." Robinson felt his hands curl into fists at his sides. He had approved the budget cuts that delayed maintenance on that freezer. He remembered the email, the neat bullet points, the projected savings. He had never imagined what it sounded like when those decisions came due. Later that day, the kitchen hummed with tension. Catherine moved faster than usual, her jokes fewer, her smile absent. Robinson watched from the edge of the doorway as she wrestled with a temperamental oven that rattled and hissed like it might explode. She hit the side of it once, sharp and frustrated. "Still broken?" Robinson asked quietly when she passed him. 2 weeks now," she replied. "Reported it 3 times. And nothing," she said. "We compensate." The words sounded bitter in her mouth. The moment stretched. Catherine glanced at the oven again, then toward the pass where plates were stacking up. She took a breath. Then she did something Robinson hadn't seen her do before. She stepped forward. "Frederick," she called, voice steady. The kitchen went quiet. Frederick turned slowly, as if annoyed to be interrupted by something beneath his notice. "Yes? The oven's not holding temperature," Catherine said. "It's affecting service." Frederick looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Is that so?" "Yes," she said. "We're doing our best, but there's only so much we can." "Enough," Frederick cut in. He stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough that everyone had to strain to hear. "You are paid to cook, Catherine. Not to diagnose equipment. not to question decisions. "I'm just trying to make sure guests get what they paid for," she replied, carefully. Frederick's smile vanished. "Do you think," he said softly, "that I don't know what guests paid for?" The kitchen held its breath. "If you can't adapt," Frederick continued, "perhaps you're not as indispensable as you believe." Catherine didn't flinch, but Robinson saw her shoulders stiffen. "Consider this a warning," Frederick said. "Return to your station." He turned away as if she were already dismissed from his thoughts. Catherine stood there for a moment, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the counter. Then she went back to work. Robinson felt sick. He followed her into the hallway a few minutes later, heart pounding. That was... He stopped himself. "You didn't do anything wrong." She let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh than one. "Tell that to my file," she said. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Warnings don't come with paperwork right away. They come later, when it's convenient." Robinson swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to step in, to reveal himself, to end this now. But he didn't. He couldn't. Not yet. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, Frederick's voice replaying in his head. Professionals adapt. The next morning, Catherine was quieter. No jokes, no scavenger hunt. Just a wrapped sandwich placed silently in his cart with no note. Robinson noticed something else, too. Frederick noticed him. It started subtly. A glance that lingered. A question asked twice. A presence felt before it was seen. "Temporary maintenance," Frederick said one afternoon, stopping Robinson mid-hallway. "What's your name again?" "Rob," Robinson replied evenly. Frederick tapped his tablet. "Last name?" Robinson hesitated for half a second too long. "Didn't catch it," he said. "Badge just says maintenance." Frederick looked up, eyes sharp. "Strange," he murmured. "HR usually lists full names." "It was an online process," Robinson said. "Lots of temps." "I see." Frederick studied him like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "And you've been here how long?" "A week." Frederick nodded slowly, then stepped aside. But he didn't leave. Over the next few days, Frederick's presence intensified. He appeared in hallways without warning. Asked questions that felt casual but weren't. Watched how long Robinson lingered near the kitchen. Robinson caught him once, standing near the service entrance, eyes narrowed, observing Catherine slip a container into the cleaning cart. Their gazes met. Frederick smiled. The staff meeting came without notice. "Event Hall B," Frederick announced. "Now." Employees filed in, shoulders tense, murmurs low. Robinson took a seat near the back, scanning the room. Catherine stood near the wall, arms crossed, expression carefully blank. Frederick positioned himself at the front like a general addressing troops. "Efficiency is our priority," he began. "And efficiency requires discipline." He paused. "Some of you have grown too comfortable." His gaze swept the room. Too casual, too familiar. Robinson felt the weight of that look. "Let me be clear," Frederick continued. "This is not a family. This is a business. A beat, and those who forget that will be reminded." After the meeting, Robinson found Catherine near the loading dock, staring out at the ocean. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "Don't be," she replied. "You didn't do this." "But She finally turned, eyes tired but steady. "Just be careful," she said. "He doesn't like things he can't control." Robinson watched her walk away, guilt heavy in his chest. That evening, Frederick sat alone in his office, tablet glowing softly in the dim light. He typed, "Rob Maintenance Tamp." No results. He frowned. Typed again. Broader search. Still nothing. Frederick leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. He didn't like missing pieces, and he never ignored instincts. The janitor was wrong, and Frederick Scott intended to find out why. If the tension is building for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories coming. The warning came on a Tuesday. It arrived quietly, folded into the day like it had always been there, like it was simply the next logical step in a process Catherine Smith had learned to recognize long before it reached her. She was plating appetizers when Frederick Scott's assistant appeared at her station. tablet held tight against her chest. "Catherine," the assistant said, voice neutral. "Frederick needs a word." The kitchen didn't stop moving, but the air changed. Shoulders stiffened. Conversations dulled. Someone turned down a burner that didn't need turning down. Catherine wiped her hands on her apron and followed. Robinson watched from the doorway as they disappeared down the corridor. He felt it then, a cold, creeping certainty. This was because of her kindness, and because of his presence. Frederick's office was all glass and angles, designed to look transparent while revealing nothing. Catherine stood across from his desk, hands clasped behind her back, posture perfect in the way people learned when mistakes were punished. Frederick didn't offer her a seat. "Sit," he said after a beat, as if granting a privilege. She sat. "We've discussed professionalism," Frederick began, tapping his tablet. "And boundaries." Catherine said nothing. "It has come to my attention," he continued, "that you've been distracted, socializing during work hours, neglecting your responsibilities." "I haven't neglected anything," Catherine said calmly. "Service has been on time. Quality has." Frederick raised a hand. "This," he said softly, "is not a debate." He slid the tablet across the desk. "Formal warning, performance and conduct." Catherine stared at the words. "For what?" she asked. "For forgetting your place," Frederick replied. "For speaking out of turn. For associating too freely with staff outside your department." Her jaw tightened. "You mean the janitor?" Frederick smiled thinly. "I mean distractions." Catherine leaned back slowly. "I help people when they need it. That's all. And that," Frederick said, eyes cold, "is not your job." He leaned forward. "Consider this your only warning. Next time we discuss reassignment or termination." Catherine stood. "Am I dismissed?" "Yes," Frederick said. "And, Catherine," she paused. "Adapt," he finished. "Professionals do." She walked out without another word. Robinson saw her emerge from the corridor 10 minutes later, face carefully blank, eyes fixed ahead. "Hey," he said quietly, stepping toward her. "Are you—" "I'm fine," she replied quickly. Too quickly. She brushed past him, disappearing into the kitchen. That afternoon, something strange happened. Oven 3, the one that had rattled and hissed and burned food unevenly for weeks, was replaced. Not patched. Not temporarily fixed. Replaced. Technicians arrived with clipboards and tools, blocking off part of the kitchen. New equipment gleamed under the fluorescent lights. A supervisor signed off without complaint. No announcement, no explanation. Catherine stared at the oven like it might disappear if she blinked. "That's new," one of the line cooks muttered. "Since when do we get nice things?" Another whispered. Catherine felt unease curl in her stomach. Later that evening, she checked her employee file, the one she'd learned to access years ago after watching a coworker escorted out with no warning. The formal warning was gone. Not marked, resolved. Not downgraded. Gone. She refreshed the page. Logged out. Logged back in. Still gone. Catherine leaned back in her chair, heart beating faster. Things didn't disappear like that. The next morning, she found Robinson in the service hallway, methodically wiping down a railing that already shone. "You busy?" she asked. "Immensely," he replied without looking up. She studied him for a moment. "They replaced the oven." "So I heard," he said lightly. "And my warning," she continued. "It vanished." He paused, just for a fraction of a second. Then he resumed wiping. "That's good news," he said. Catherine frowned. "It doesn't happen," she said. "Not without paperwork. Not without meetings. Not without someone making it very clear they're doing you a favor." Robinson met her gaze. Careful. Maybe someone noticed. "Who?" He shrugged. "Miracles happen." She didn't smile. The small inconsistencies piled up quickly after that. A shift reassignment that never went through. An overtime dispute quietly resolved in her favor. A maintenance request approved within hours instead of weeks. Each time, Catherine felt the same mix of relief and suspicion. And each time, Robinson was nearby. Not obvious. Not interfering. Just. One afternoon, she cornered him near the supply closet. "You've been here longer than most temps," she said. Guess I'm hard to get rid of. You don't act like a temp. He tilted his head. How so? Most people keep their heads down, she replied. They don't ask questions. They don't notice patterns. They don't care. And I do. You do, she said. Too much. He smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just curious. Catherine crossed her arms. Curious about what? He hesitated. About people, he said finally. The answer felt rehearsed. Safe. Not enough. Meanwhile, Frederick Scott was growing restless. He noticed the oven. He noticed the missing warning. He noticed the janitor who didn't flinch under scrutiny. He didn't comment, not yet. Instead, he watched. He summoned it under the guise of a routine audit. He requested updated staff rosters. He reviewed maintenance logs with a precision that unsettled his assistants. Temporary maintenance, he muttered one evening, scrolling through records. Rob. The system blinked back at him. No last name. No background. No employment history beyond the past week. Frederick leaned back, lips thinning. No one slipped through his systems. No one. The tension came to a head late one night. Catherine found Robinson on the East Terrace, wrestling with a ladder that clearly hated him. You know that's not safe, she said, approaching. I've been told, he replied, adjusting his grip. Repeatedly. She sighed. Frederick assigned you this, didn't he? Yes. In the dark? Yes. She shook her head. He's testing you. I noticed. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. There's a better ladder in storage 3. It creaks, but it holds. How do you know that? She smiled humorlessly. Because he made me use it during a storm once. Robinson froze. During a storm? Guests complained about raindrops on the glass, she said. Apparently the ocean doesn't respect luxury. Anger surged through him, hot and immediate. That's not acceptable, he said before he could stop himself. Catherine studied his face. Funny, she said slowly. You sound like someone who could do something about it. He caught himself. He corrected. It shouldn't be normal. She nodded, eyes narrowing. Yeah, she said. It shouldn't. That night, Robinson lay awake again. He had crossed a line, intervened when he promised himself he wouldn't, altered systems quietly, thinking it harmless. But kindness, he was learning, came with consequences, and Catherine was paying for it. The next morning, Frederick Scott stood in his office, staring at his screen. He had found it. A maintenance override approved without his authorization, an HR adjustment logged without a supervisor's signature. Small things. But together, they told a story. Frederick smiled slowly. The janitor was not just a janitor, and Frederick Scott was done waiting. If the tension is tightening for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you stories that keep you hooked. There was a strange peace that settled in the quiet hours before dawn. The resort slept differently at that time, less like a palace and more like a body catching its breath. The ocean murmured beyond the glass walls. Hallway lights dimmed to a soft amber. Footsteps echoed longer, lonelier. Robinson found himself living for those hours. He was wiping down the railings outside the ballroom when Catherine appeared, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee like contraband. You look like someone who forgot how sleep works, she said, handing him one. He accepted it carefully. I was going to say the same about you. Occupational hazard, she replied, leaning against the wall beside him. Also poor life choices. They sipped in silence for a moment, the steam fogging the air between them. I never asked, Robinson said. Why you stay? Catherine glanced at him. At the resort? Anywhere, he clarified. She considered the question, eyes drifting toward the ocean. Because leaving costs money, she said simply. And hope. And sometimes you can only afford to lose one of those at a time. Robinson nodded slowly. What about you? She asked. Why does a janitor work like he's studying the place? He smiled faintly. Habit. That's not an answer. No, he admitted. It's not. They finished their coffee. Catherine crushed her cup and tossed it into a nearby bin. I wanted to be a chef, she said suddenly. Not line cook. Not helper. A chef. My own place. Small. Loud. Somewhere people eat because they're happy, not because they're showing off. That still sounds possible, Robinson said. She laughed quietly. You don't get older in kitchens. You get tired. The words settled heavy between them. He wanted to tell her everything then. Wanted to say, I can fix this. Wanted to say, you deserve more. Instead, he asked, do you regret it? She thought for a long moment. No, she said finally. But I regret believing hard work was enough. The closeness grew in small, unremarkable ways after that. A shared look when Frederick walked by. A joke passed under breath during inspections. An extra moment lingered before parting. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was recognition. Catherine began to notice things. The way Robinson really listened when people spoke. The way supervisors softened around him without realizing why. The way problems seemed to dissolve quietly after he noticed them. One evening, she found him seated on a crate in the loading dock, staring at his hands. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he said too quickly. She sat beside him anyway. You ever feel like you're living someone else's life? She asked. All the time, he replied. She turned toward him, studying his face. Funny, she said. Me too. There it was, the unspoken question hovering between them. She didn't ask it outright. Not yet, but she tested the edges. You never talk about where you're from, she said another night. Or why you're here. I'm here because I need to be, he replied. That's vague. I'm not very specific, he said with a smile. She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. Frederick Scott, meanwhile, was piecing together his puzzle. He didn't have the full picture, but he had enough to recognize the shape. A maintenance request approved under a dormant executive code. HR changes logged from an IP address tied to the corporate wing. Security footage that glitched only when certain faces passed by. Frederick sat in his office late one night. Tie loosened. Tablet glowing. He replayed the footage again. Robinson paused near the kitchen. Catherine slipped him a container. Robinson glanced up directly toward the camera. Frederick froze the frame. Zoomed in. The janitor's posture was wrong. Too relaxed. Too confident. Frederick leaned back, fingers steepled. He didn't know who Robinson was yet, but he knew what he wasn't. The confrontation came quietly. Catherine waited until the kitchen emptied, until the last pan was scrubbed and the floor gleamed. You ever lie? She asked Robinson as they walked down the service corridor. Occasionally, he said. Badly. Big lies, she clarified. The kind that change things. He stopped walking. Why? He asked. She faced him fully now. Because things keep changing around me, she said. And you're always nearby. Silence stretched. I don't think you're dangerous, she continued. But I do think you're hiding. Robinson swallowed. I'm just a janitor, he said softly. She searched his face. That's not what I asked, she replied. He didn't answer. She nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. Okay, she said. Then here's my truth. She stepped closer. If your secrets put a target on my back, she said, voice steady. I walk away. No questions, no drama. Hematargaze, I wouldn't let that happen, he said. You already have, she replied gently. She turned and walked away before he could stop her. That night, Frederick Scott received the final confirmation he needed. A name surfaced in an archived corporate directory, flagged but not erased. Robinson Tyler. Access level. Founder, executive. Frederick stared at the screen. Then he laughed. Slowly, softly. The kind of laugh that meant the game had finally become interesting. If the truth feels close now, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach more people. Frederick Scott did not rush. That was the mistake people made when they underestimated him. Assuming cruelty came with impatience, that power lunged instead of coiling. Frederick coiled. He sat in his office long after midnight. Lights dimmed. The ocean a dark sheet beyond the glass. The name on his screen glowed softly. Undeniable now. Robinson Tyler. Founder. Owner. The man whose signature sat at the bottom of every policy Frederick enforced. Frederick exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. So, he murmured to the empty room. That's who you are. He replayed everything in his mind, the way Robinson watched instead of reacted, the way systems bent quietly around him, the way fear never quite touched him. It all made sense now. The janitor hadn't been careless. He'd been testing. Frederick smiled. A thin, precise thing. By morning, the trap was set. Robinson felt it before he saw it. The air shifted when he stepped into the service corridor, thicker, charged. Conversations died too quickly. Eyes darted away. Even the hum of the resort seemed muted. Like a held breath, Frederick was waiting. He leaned against a column near the elevators. Tablet tucked under his arm. Suit impeccable as ever. "Mr. Tyler," he said softly. The name landed like a dropped plate. Robinson stopped. No pretense now, no raised voice. Just the truth, laid bare. "You've been busy," Frederick continued, pushing off the column and circling him slowly. "Cleaning floors, observing staff, interfering with operations." Robinson met his gaze. "You're mistaken." Frederick chuckled. "Am I?" He held up the tablet, tilting it just enough for Robinson to see the screen, an internal profile, access logs, timestamps that told a story Robinson hadn't meant to write. "I admire the commitment," Frederick said. "Most executives wouldn't last an hour without their assistants." "What do you want?" Robinson asked. Frederick stopped in front of him. "Silence," he replied. "Control. Continuity." Robinson felt a chill settle in his chest. "You see," Frederick went on, voice conversational, "this resort runs smoothly because people believe in the hierarchy. They believe in rules, in consequences." He leaned closer. "Your little experiment threatens that." Robinson's jaw tightened. "The only thing threatening this resort is fear." Frederick's smile sharpened. "And fear," he said, "is my specialty." The pressure on Catherine intensified immediately. Her schedule shifted without notice, longer hours, fewer breaks, tasks reassigned. Eyes on her constantly. "Frederick wants to see you," a supervisor said for the third time that day. She wiped her hands and followed, dread curling in her stomach. This time, Frederick didn't bother with warnings. "You've become a liability," he said plainly. "Too many questions. Too many—" Catherine folded her arms. "If this is about helping a coworker, it's about loyalty," Frederick snapped. "And yours is questionable." She stared at him, stunned. "I do my job," she said. "Better than most." "That's not the point," he replied coldly. "The point is who you align yourself with." He leaned back in his chair. "Consider this an opportunity," he continued. "Distance yourself, or I make decisions for you." Catherine left his office, shaking not with fear, but anger. She found Robinson near the loading dock, wrestling with a crate he didn't need to move. "They're coming after me," she said quietly. He froze. "I know," he replied. She searched his face, frustration spilling over. "Then stop pretending this is nothing." He turned toward her, conflict written plain. "I can't," he said. "Why?" she demanded. "Why won't you just tell me what's going on?" Because the truth would cost her safety. Because silence was the only shield he had left. "I'm trying to protect you," he said instead. She laughed, sharp and humorless. "You don't protect people by lying to them." She walked away before he could respond. Frederick summoned Robinson again that evening. This time, it wasn't in a hallway. It was in the executive lounge, leather chairs, low lighting, the kind of place meant for deals. Frederick poured himself a drink. "Didn't offer one. I'll be direct," he said. "You expose me. I expose you." Robinson raised an eyebrow. "Expose what?" Frederick smiled. "That the great Robinson Tyler lied to his staff, manipulated them. Let a woman believe her kindness mattered when it was all part of an experiment." Robinson felt the words like a blow. "That's not true," he said. "Isn't it?" Frederick countered. "You watched. You measured. You intervened only when it suited you." He leaned forward. "How do you think she'll feel when she finds out?" Silence stretched between them. "I'll keep your secret," Frederick continued. "I'll maintain order. And in return, you let me run this resort the way I see fit. And Catherine?" Robinson asked quietly. Frederick's eyes glittered. She adapts. The choice loomed heavy. Truth meant chaos. Control meant complicity. Robinson stood. "No," he said. Frederick's smile faded. "You're making a mistake." Robinson met his gaze. "So are you." The next morning, the announcement went out. Mandatory staff meeting. Event Hall B. Immediately, Catherine read the message on her phone, heart pounding. Across the resort, Robinson felt the same tightening in his chest. Frederick Scott stood at the front of the hall. Hands clasped, eyes calm. The trap was closing. And everyone was about to hear the truth one way or another. If the stakes feel higher now, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that hit deep. Catherine didn't want to go to the meeting. That was the first thought that struck her as she stood in the staff restroom, staring at her reflection under harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes looked tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Her shoulders were tight, braced for impact. Mandatory meetings were never good news. They were where warnings became decisions, where quiet threats turned official. She splashed water on her face and straightened her apron. "Get through it," she told herself. "Then leave." Outside, the corridor buzzed with anxious movement. Staff poured toward Event Hall B in small clusters, whispering, speculating. Catherine walked alone. She didn't see Robinson. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Event Hall B felt smaller than usual. Chairs packed close, the air thick with unease. Catherine took a spot near the aisle, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room. Then she saw him. Robinson stood near the side wall, still in his janitor's uniform, hands folded in front of him, expression unreadable. Relief flickered, brief, unwanted. "At least I'm not alone," she thought. Frederick Scott stepped onto the small stage at the front, perfectly composed. He waited for silence, then smiled. "We have an issue," he began. "An issue of trust." Catherine felt her stomach drop. "There is," Frederick continued, "someone among us who has not been honest about who they are." A murmur rippled through the room. Catherine's gaze snapped to Robinson. He didn't look at her. Frederick's voice was calm, almost pleased. "Someone who has been observing, interfering, manipulating." Her heart started to race. "This person," Frederick said, "believed they could play both sides. But secrets have a way of surfacing." He paused. "Mr. Tyler," Frederick said, turning slightly, "perhaps you'd like to explain yourself." The room went still. Robinson stepped forward, not rushed, not defensive. Just deliberate. "I think," he said quietly, "that I should." He took one step, then another. The sound of his shoes echoed too loudly. Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. "No," she whispered, though no one heard her. Robinson stopped in the center aisle and turned to face the room. "My name," he said, voice steady, "is Robinson Tyler." The name meant nothing at first. Then someone gasped. Another whisper followed. Then another. Recognition spread like a slow wave. Catherine's ears rang. "I'm the owner of this resort," Robinson continued. "And I've spent the past weeks working here as a janitor." The words hit her like a physical blow. Owner, resort, janitor. Her mind scrambled, trying to fit the pieces together. But they refused to align. Plates sliding across counters. Coffee shared in silence. Confessions whispered in hallways. All of it reframed. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Robinson's eyes found hers. For a heartbeat, everything else disappeared. "I did it to understand what wasn't working," he said. "To see what reports don't show. To feel what you feel." Catherine laughed, a short, broken sound. "You felt me," she thought bitterly. "You studied me." "I didn't expect," Robinson began. She didn't stay to hear the rest. She pushed past knees and bags, past stunned faces, her chest tight, vision blurring. The doors burst open and she was out in the corridor, breath coming fast, hands shaking. Footsteps followed. "Catherine, wait." She turned sharply. "What?" she demanded. Robinson stopped a few feet away, uncertainty flickering across his face. "You lied to me," she said, voice trembling. "Every day. I didn't lie about caring, he said. Her laugh this time was harsh. You let me feed you, she said. You let me worry about you. You let me think I was helping someone who had nothing. That's not… You knew exactly what you were doing. She cut in. You watched me struggle. You watched them threaten me. And you stayed quiet. I was trying to fix it, he said. Quietly. Without risking yourself? She finished. Silence stretched. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. Do you have any idea how small you made me feel? She asked. How stupid. That was never my intention, he said. But it was the result, she replied. You took my kindness and turned it into a case study. Her voice broke. I trusted you. Robinson felt the weight of those words settle deep in his chest. I'm sorry, he said softly. She shook her head. Sorry doesn't give me my dignity back. She took a step away. You don't get to decide what this costs, she said. You don't get to buy your way out of it. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. What can I do? He asked. She met his gaze one last time. Nothing, she said. That's the point. Then she walked away. Robinson stood alone in the corridor long after she disappeared. The sounds of the meeting resumed behind him, voices raised, questions shouted, but they felt distant, unreal. Money had always been his solution. Build it. Fix it. Replace it. But this? This wasn't broken equipment or missing files. This was trust. And trust didn't respond to leverage. He stepped back into the hall. Frederick watched him from the stage, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Robinson felt something settle inside him then, not anger, not fear, but resolve. He took a breath and raised his hand. I'm not finished, he said. The room quieted. I didn't come here to manipulate anyone, he continued. And I won't hide behind silence anymore. Frederick's smile faltered. I let fear run this place, Robinson said. I let people like you enforce it. And that ends now. He looked at the faces in front of him, tired, wary, hopeful. I'm telling the truth, he said. All of it, today. As he spoke, he knew one thing with painful clarity. Telling the truth wouldn't win Catherine back, but it was the only thing left worth doing. If this chapter hit you emotionally, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Event Hall B had never felt so heavy. The room was packed beyond comfort chairs dragged from storage, staff standing along the walls, arms folded, eyes alert. The air buzzed with tension. A low electrical hum of fear, curiosity, and something dangerously close to hope. Robinson stood at the front, still in his janitor's uniform. The navy blue fabric felt heavier now, soaked with meaning. Every scuff mark, every crease told a story he could no longer outrun. Frederick Scott stood several feet away, immaculate as ever, hands clasped behind his back, posture calm. He looked like a man who believed the ending had already been written. The room whispered, Is it true? That's the owner? He cleaned the east terrace during the storm. Catherine stood near the side wall, half hidden behind a column. She hadn't planned to stay, but something had rooted her there. Robinson cleared his throat. I want to start, he said, voice carrying, by saying that Frederick Scott is correct about one thing. Frederick's eyebrow lifted slightly. There was someone here pretending, Robinson continued, pretending not to have power, pretending not to be responsible. He paused. That person was me. A ripple of sound passed through the hall. Robinson took a breath. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I didn't come here to run a stunt. I came because the reports on my desk didn't match the reality on these floors. He gestured around him, so I chose to see it myself. Frederick stepped forward smoothly. With respect, he said, voice polished. This is highly inappropriate. If Mr. Tyler has concerns, they should be addressed privately. What he's doing now, confusing staff, undermining leadership. Leadership? Robinson echoed. The word hung in the air. Yes, Frederick replied evenly. Leadership, structure, order. The very things that keep this place functioning. Robinson turned fully toward him. Order built on fear isn't leadership, he said. It's control. A murmur swept the room. Robinson didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I watched staff skip meals because the cafeteria closed early, he said. I watched 16-hour shifts treated like normal. I watched broken equipment ignored because fixing it cost money. His eyes scanned the faces in front of him. And I watched people punished for asking questions. Frederick's jaw tightened. These are operational challenges, Frederick said sharply. Not abuses. Robinson nodded once. Then let's talk specifics. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Oven 3, he said. Reported broken for 2 weeks. Repair requests denied to optimize costs. Several kitchen staff gasped. East Terrace cleaning during storms, Robinson continued. Assigned despite safety risks. More murmurs. Formal warnings issued without documentation, he added, then quietly removed. Frederick took a step forward. You're twisting procedures to fit a narrative, he snapped. Robinson met his gaze calmly. No, he said. I'm reading them as they were written. He turned back to the staff. I approved budgets without asking questions, he admitted. I trusted leadership without verification. That's on me. The room went still. But I will not accept fear as a management strategy, Robinson continued. And I will not ignore harm because it's efficient. Frederick laughed a short, incredulous sound. You're naive, he said. This industry doesn't run on kindness. Robinson nodded. You're right, he said. Then he smiled faintly. It runs on people. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then louder. Someone stood. Then another. Frederick raised his voice. This is a mistake, he said. If you undermine authority like this, you destabilize everything. Robinson turned to the security team standing near the exit. Please escort Frederick Scott from the premises, he said. Effective immediately. He is suspended pending investigation. The words landed like a thunderclap. Frederick stared at him. You can't do that, he said. I can, Robinson replied. And I am. Security stepped forward. This is outrageous, Frederick protested, voice rising. You're choosing sentiment over structure. Robinson didn't waver. I'm choosing accountability. As Frederick was led away, his gaze flicked toward Catherine Sharp, calculating before disappearing through the doors. The room erupted. Applause, cheers, shouts of relief. Robinson stood quietly through it all. He didn't smile. Across the hall, Catherine watched. She didn't clap. She saw the courage in his words, the honesty, the change, but she also saw the cost. When the noise finally faded, Robinson spoke again. This resort will change, he said. Not tomorrow, not perfectly, but deliberately. He looked toward Catherine. Their eyes met. The applause returned louder this time. But between them, silence. If this moment gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The resort did not change overnight. That was the first truth Robinson learned after the applause faded and Frederick Scott's office door was sealed shut. Change, real change, moved slower than outrage and quieter than celebration. The next morning, Robinson arrived early, not in a suit, not behind closed doors, but walking the same halls he had scrubbed weeks earlier. The janitor's uniform was gone, folded neatly in his apartment, but the habits remained. He noticed which lights flickered, which doors stuck, which employees moved like they were still waiting for permission to breathe. The first memo went out before noon. Immediate policy review and temporary oversight committee. Overtime pay. Adjustments effective immediately. Equipment repairs approved. No departmental overrides. It was concise, direct, unbranded, no glossy language, no press release. When the PR team suggested a media statement, a bold leader reconnects with the heart of his workforce, Robinson declined. No spin, he said. Not yet. Sir, one advisor insisted, this is an opportunity to control the narrative. Robinson looked up from the stack of maintenance requests on his desk. I've controlled the narrative long enough, he replied. Now I want the truth to catch up. Repairs began immediately. Oven 3 was just the start. Walk-in freezers were replaced. Faulty ladders removed. Safety protocols rewritten by people who actually used the equipment. Wages followed. Hourly rates adjusted. Overtime compensated retroactively. Schedules restructured to eliminate 16-hour shifts masquerading as dedication. The changes rippled outward, cautious at first, then steadier. Staff watched closely. Some waited for the rollback. Some waited for punishment to return wearing a new face. Some didn't believe it at all. Catherine noticed everything. She noticed when her paycheck increased without explanation, when her schedule capped at reasonable hours, when the kitchen supervisor asked for input and waited for an answer. She also noticed when Robinson kept his distance. Their paths crossed, often corridors, briefings, inspections, but he never approached her alone, never forced conversation, never explained. It felt deliberate. A promotion followed 2 weeks later. Catherine Smith, kitchen operations lead. She read the email twice before believing it. It came with authority, decision-making power, a raise substantial enough to breathe. She accepted, but she didn't celebrate. Robinson heard about the promotion secondhand. From HR, "She hasn't responded to your congratulatory note," the manager said carefully. "That's fine," Robinson replied. He told himself it was fine. Still, he tried. Once, in the staff cafeteria now open extended hours, he approached her table cautiously. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you," she replied, polite but distant. "I meant it," he added. "I know," she said. "That doesn't make it simple." Another time, he apologized again. Not publicly, not dramatically. "I should have trusted you with the truth," he said quietly near the loading dock where everything had once fallen apart. She didn't look at him. "You should have trusted me to choose," she replied. "Instead, you decided for me." "I was afraid," he admitted. She finally turned. "That's the thing," she said. "So was I. Only one of us had a safety net." The words stayed with him long after she walked away. Robinson learned something else in those weeks. Justice did not heal everything it touched. Some employees forgave quickly. Others didn't. Some thanked him openly. Others avoided him entirely. Trust, he realized, was not restored by policy. It was rebuilt by consistency. And Catherine? She flourished. She led the kitchen with a calm authority that earned respect without demanding it. She spoke up in meetings. She implemented systems that made work lighter, not just faster. She didn't ask Robinson for permission. One afternoon, she stopped him outside the kitchen. "I want to be clear," she said. He nodded, bracing himself. "I appreciate what you've done for the staff," she continued. "For me, I didn't do enough," he said. She held up a hand. "This isn't about gratitude," she said. "It's about boundaries." He listened. "I don't want favors," she said. "I don't want protection. And I don't want my growth tied to guilt or apologies." "I understand," he said quietly. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good," she said. "Because I earned this." She turned back toward the kitchen, shoulders squared, posture confident. Robinson watched her go. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to follow. If this chapter resonated with you, if growth, accountability, and self-worth matter to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them. Time did not move the way Robinson expected it to. There were no dramatic turning points. No single morning where the weight lifted and everything felt forgiven. Instead, days stacked on top of one another like plates after service, quietly, steadily until something like trust began to take shape. 3 months passed. Not announced, not commemorated, just lived. Robinson stopped trying to prove anything and started showing up. Every morning, he walked the resort before sunrise, not with a clipboard and entourage, but with a notebook he filled himself. He listened more than he spoke. When someone complained, he didn't promise solutions on the spot. He asked questions. He followed up. He came back. He worked, not symbolically, not performatively. Actually, he helped housekeeping strip rooms when a cruise group checked out early. He stood shoulder to shoulder with maintenance while they rewired lighting along the east terrace. He spent an entire afternoon carrying crates in the storage wing when a delivery arrived late and short-staffed. No cameras, no memos, no speeches. At first, staff didn't know what to make of it. Some waited for the moment he'd get tired and disappear back into glass offices. Others suspected a long game. PR delayed. Optics postponed. But Robinson kept coming. He took breaks when everyone else took breaks. Ate in the cafeteria without special treatment. Waited in line. Learned names. And when mistakes happened, he didn't shield himself with authority. He apologized. Catherine watched from a distance. She didn't avoid him anymore, but she didn't seek him out either. She saw him in the kitchen during inspections. Listening while line cooks explained bottlenecks, she noticed how he deferred to her decisions without flinching. No overriding. No subtle steering. No owner's opinion. When equipment failed, it was fixed without fanfare. When schedules clashed, solutions came with compromise instead of commands. It unsettled her. Not because it felt fake, but because it didn't. One afternoon, she found him in the prep area, sleeves rolled up, chopping vegetables with a concentration that bordered on reverence. "You're holding the knife wrong," she said without thinking. He glanced up. "I was hoping you'd say that." She sighed, stepped closer, and adjusted his grip. "You don't force it. You guide it. Like leadership," he offered. She paused, then nodded once. Like leadership. They worked in silence after that comfortable, unforced. Later, as the kitchen quieted, Robinson spoke. "I didn't come here today to apologize," he said. Catherine glanced at him. "Good. I came to ask something instead." She waited. "Would you be willing?" He said carefully. "To tell me when I get it wrong?" She studied his face, searching for manipulation, for expectation. She found none. "I already do," she said. A faint smile crossed his face. "Then keep doing that." The conversations changed after that. They weren't confessions. They weren't debates. They were honest. One night, they sat on the steps outside the service entrance, the ocean air cool against their skin. "I grew up thinking money fixed things," Robinson said quietly. "Not because I was greedy. Because it worked until it didn't." Catherine didn't respond immediately. "When I was younger," she said, "I thought effort guaranteed outcomes. That if I just worked harder, spoke less, adapted more, I'd be safe." She looked out at the water. "We were both wrong." She finished. He nodded. In different ways. There was no promise in that moment. No reaching for hands. Just understanding. Weeks passed. Catherine led the kitchen through a difficult season, high occupancy, staff shortages, supply delays. She handled it with a calm competence that drew respect from every corner of the resort. Robinson didn't step in. He asked how he could support. Then he did exactly that and nothing more. One evening, after a particularly brutal service, Catherine found him waiting by the loading dock. "You didn't need to stay," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. She hesitated. Then she sat beside him. "I don't know where this goes," she said quietly. "I don't either," he answered. She looked at him, then really looked. Not at the owner, not at the janitor, at the man who stayed. "That's okay," she said finally. "For now." The words weren't forgiveness, but they weren't rejection either. Hope, Robinson realized, wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It waited patient, fragile, earned. If this chapter gave you hope, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this find their way. Robinson returned to the lobby early one morning, long before guests drifted down in white robes and soft expectations. The marble floor gleamed. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls, turning the ocean beyond into a quiet canvas of blue and silver. Seagulls passed overhead, indifferent to luxury, faithful only to the wind. He stood exactly where it had begun, where he had once knelt, where he had scrubbed a stain that refused to come out, invisible to everyone who mattered until one person noticed. He didn't kneel this time. He stood, hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed, breathing easy in a way he hadn't known he'd been holding back for years. The experiment was over, not because it had succeeded, but because it had taught him something he could no longer unsee. He had always believed he was a good man. He paid fair salaries. He donated generously. He spoke about values in boardrooms filled with glass and confidence. But goodness, he had learned, was not proven in distance. It was proven in proximity. He had been blind, not willfully, cruel, not indifferent by design, but blind all the same. Blind to hunger that arrived quietly, blind to fear disguised as professionalism, blind to the way power pressed down without ever raising its voice. He had trusted systems instead of people, and people had paid the price. A soft sound echoed behind him. Footsteps. He turned. Catherine stood a few paces away. Clipboard tucked under one arm, hair pulled back, eyes clear. She no longer moved like someone bracing for impact. She moved like someone who belonged. "Morning," she said. "Morning," he replied. They stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable, earned. "I heard you've been haunting the lobby again," she added lightly. "Old habits," he said. "I wanted to remember." She followed his gaze to the floor. "This where you started?" she asked. He nodded. "This exact spot." She stepped closer, standing beside him now, both of them looking out toward the ocean. "Funny," she said. "I used to walk through here every day and feel like it wasn't meant for people like me. And now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Now it's just a place." "That's progress." They walked together, unhurried, past the front desk, past the elevators, past guests who smiled politely seeing them both, not just one. Over the past months, the resort had changed in ways that didn't make headlines. Staff turnover slowed. Laughter returned to hallways. Meetings ended with conversations instead of commands. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was honest. Later that afternoon, Robinson sat in his office, not the glass tower downtown, but the modest space overlooking the service courtyard. The door was open, as it had been for weeks. He was reviewing schedules when Catherine knocked lightly. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Always," he said. She stepped inside but didn't sit. "I've been thinking," she began. "About us. About whatever this is." He listened. "I don't trust easily," she continued. "Not anymore. And I won't pretend what happened didn't hurt." "I wouldn't ask you to," he said. "But," she added, meeting his eyes, "I do trust what I've seen since." He felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but something gentler. "You didn't disappear," she said. "You didn't perform. You stayed." "I plan to," he replied. She nodded. "So," she said, a hint of warmth breaking through. "We can try. Slowly. Honestly. No promises. No grand gestures. Just choice." "That sounds perfect," he said. They didn't shake hands. They didn't rush. She smiled, and that was enough. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the resort filled with golden light, Robinson walked the halls one last time before heading home. He passed the kitchen busy, efficient, alive. Catherine stood at the center of it, giving instructions, laughing at something a cook said, fully seen. She caught his eye, rolled her eyes playfully. He smiled. In the lobby, a guest paused near the elevator. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Could you tell me where the restaurant is?" Robinson gestured down the hall. "Straight ahead," he replied. "You can't miss it. Thank you," she said, smiling before turning away. Robinson watched her go. Not invisible, just present. Outside, the ocean breathed in its endless rhythm, unchanged and unbothered by human revelations. Inside, something quieter had shifted. A man who once watched had learned to stand up. A woman who once carried everything alone had learned she didn't have to. And together, without spectacle or certainty, they stepped forward. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness matters, that accountability changes lives, and that trust is earned, not bought, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that matter. Thank you for being here.